by Mike, the Big Cheese.
In the heat of welcome back to the Heavy Metal Man Radio Show. It is Sunday, June 29th. We're at the halfway point for 2025. It's going really quick. Here in the USA, this week is also the 4th of July, and we'll have our 4th of July special on this Thursday on the holiday matinee at 12 o'clock, so don't forget to tune in. It's not a live show, it's pre-recorded, 1 hour long, just featuring holiday music, which is all about the 4th of July here in the US and Independence Day. So tune in if you can. It'll be on the replay right after it airs. Not technically live, but in a way live, even though it was pre-recorded this Thursday at 12 o'clock. Right there, Astrogoth. Oh man, I love those guys. They were so good back in the day. Out of Belgium, Rudy the White Shark was on my show many times in the early days. It's hard to believe that he passed away. I think it's about 10 years ago now. I think in 2015 he died. He was a good guy, a sweet guy, and a nice man. It's a shame that he's gone. But the band is still going on. Mario, the drummer, who's the only original member left from the early days, is still in the band, and it's mostly new guys after that. So make of it as you will and what you will, but they were killer back then. You couldn't beat them. Samurai right there. We got a great show for everybody tonight. Michael, Frederick, and Patrick of Mistress are on tonight's show. We already did this interview. It's pre-recorded because of the time difference between here and Sweden. And live, Tommy Lee Flood, ex-Banshee, and he's got his solo record Flood, which was released quite a while ago, but really didn't go anywhere because he didn't have the distribution that he needed. But our friends at Heaven and Hell did a masterful job of putting this record out like they always do, and we'll be talking to Tommy in the second half of the show. All right, let's get back to the clip. We got a lot of new music tonight, too. My good friend Evo from Warfare just sent me over some brand new Warfare tracks. You're going to hear him for the first time tonight. We'll do that in the next set of music. We got some brand new Forbidden. I haven't even had a chance to listen to it yet, so we'll listen to that together. So how about we go back and do a little more old school thrust off that first record, Destructor. Out of Long Island, New York, Armed Forces with Knight Rider. Before that, Black Star with Shadows of May. The Shadows of May have brought a lot of heat to June because we have had such a hot week here in New York. We lost power a few times. Our power is still going in and out. I guess it's because I retired from the local electrical utility company. They just don't know how to maintain the system without me on the employee role. But we've gone in and out. So if the show gets disconnected tonight or we lose it, understand that we have had power outages all week. And my air has been going in and out. The central areas, I've had the repairman there 3 times this week because Con Edison keeps lowering the voltage and damaging our equipment. But if we do lose it, I can't help it. But that's what happened. We're having a power outage again. I can see things starting to flicker around in the studio. But right there, I mean, Armed Forces, I love that EP, Let There Be Metal. We had the bass player on the show many, many years ago. And according to him, the band never played live. They never did anything but record the record and rehearse. And I tried to get Mike Mann on the show, who was the main guy in the band, the guitar player. But it never happened. And I reached out to Scott Knight. That's not his real name; it's a stage name. About coming on. He has some family issues he was trying to take care of with his parents. I think we're all at that age right now where our parents are getting older and we're taking care of them. So he said maybe at the end of the year we'll do it. So it'd be great to talk to him about what was going on in that band because we didn't really get a lot out of the bass player when he was on the show. It was almost like he was a guest in the band when you listen to that interview, but it is what it is. All right, my good friend Evo from Warfare called me yesterday. Said I got a couple of new tunes I want you to play. Can you get them on? And of course, because he's always one of my favorite guests to have on. He's such a character. He's no different today than he was back then when he was a teenager and a young man in Warfare. He's a character. So let's play some brand new Warfare. He gave me a couple of songs. Maybe we'll play one each week for the next 2 or 3 weeks till we go through them all. But let's do Dance for Tomorrow right now. This is pure classic Warfare in my opinion.
From east it was sent to kill.
right, brand new Forbidden, Divided by Zero. They gave me that song about a week ago. I didn't have time to get it on last week, so we played it now. That was actually the first time I'm hearing it myself. And like Imam was saying in the chat room, Forbidden or Dark Angel, I'll take the Forbidden. Norman Skinner's a great singer. I mean, if you listen to Nivian or his band Skinner, he sounds incredible. He has a much deeper, rougher voice that for Forbidden, because that's kind of what fits in with the music. And I was like, when I heard that he joined the band, I was like, I don't know how that's going to work out, but to me, it sounded pretty good. We'll see what the rest of the record sounds like. I guess it's easy to write good songs when you're not writing for your fans. Like Greg Lucerio said when he was on the show, that he don't care about the fans. He writes what he wants for himself. So I guess it works out better that way. All right, we spoke to Mistress the other day. We're gonna get that interview on right now, and we'll play. We'll open up with a song. We'll play the interview, and then we'll get the Tommy Lee Flood live right after this. So let's play Every Night. We'll get the interview on, and then we'll talk to Tommy live right after this.
Hello.
Hey, how are you today?
I'm fine, and you?
I'm doing great. It's a pleasure to talk to you. And it was hard to get this set up, but we did it.
Yeah, we did it at last. We usually use we use Teams. I think it's like Skype, old Skype, something.
Yeah, it's definitely like Skype. Skype went out of business, so I didn't know what to do after they stopped working.
Hey man,
Freddie, how are
this
you?
is our drummer Pat.
Hi.
Hey, Pat, how are you?
I'm fine. I'm fine.
Great. Well, listen, it's a pleasure to have you guys on the show. I mean, I remember getting a copy of your demo tape back in 1982 or 1983, somewhere around then. That's how long ago I heard Mistress. So that it's finally
Really?
getting released after 40 something years, that's incredible.
Yeah. So I
How
should
did it
make.
all come? How did it all come about? I mean, let's go back to the beginning. How the band got started in 1981.
What you can speak.
You want me to take the driver's seat for this one?
Yeah, I can take.
So has the interview officially started, or are we just warming up?
He has better English than me.
No,
I
yeah,
think.
yeah,
Yeah.
it's official. We started.
It's audio only, I presume.
Yeah, audio only.
Oh, cool. Okay. Hey, my name is Freddie.
All right.
Anyway,
Hey, Freddie, how are you? I
Yeah.
was saying, the band is 40 something years old already. I mean, how did it start for you guys back in the day? I know Freddie just joined about a year or so ago, but how did the begin back in the early 1980s?
In the early 80s,
the thing is that my father, he played bass with Mistress in the 80s. Can you shut that out?
I know he passed away. I'm sorry to hear that.
Yeah, he passed away. So I took his place now. So I wasn't really there, but I heard the stories for sure. They were they were dominating the streets. Let me tell you that. They were the only local band that had pyrotechnics for $1,000 every night.
yeah.
That was. They wanted to go out with a bam.
That they did, and when you think about the sound that the band created in 1981, that was so far ahead of music that was taking place at that time. I mean, nobody knew what was going on in the United Kingdom or the United States. We didn't have internet back then, so you didn't really know. But you guys were creating a sound that was very unique and very forward for that time of music.
Yeah, when we found the cassette a couple of years ago with the Mistress demos on it, those tapes, they were full with Thin Lizzy, Rainbow, Ozzy Osbourne, AC/DC. Trade taping was huge back then. So even though we didn't have internet, the music were well circled around, and they've been around the block. These guys.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's true. That's how I got a copy of the tape, by being a tape trader back then and having pen pals long before the internet. So we were able to do it back then without having the technology that we have today.
Yeah.
It's great. It's great. So these guys, they knew what they were doing. And they know what they wanted to do. They know how they wanted to sound and everything. The blueprints were made by great ones.
Absolutely. So you find the demo tapes somewhere in storage. You decide to what? Did you say to yourself, let's kind of fix these up and get them out there officially as a release?
The thing is that the masters are gone. There's just one audio
Yeah.
file. So you can't really mix it. But it turned out great anyway. The thing is that Michael's son, Daniel, he found the cassette in the attic and he was like, oh, I like this. And I know a guy on YouTube, he likes to upload old metal stuff. So I will send this to him. And it basically exploded. Like 100,000 streams very fast. So that's where the idea came in, I guess. Like, I think I said, guys, you need to get your shit together because people want to hear Mystery 2024. And I have a guy, I know a festival we can do. I can play the bass. Let's do this. This is way long overdue. And it's about time we get Mistress out there.
I mean, over 40 years, did you ever once think about putting the band back together, or was it just because you found the tape that everything started rolling after that?
It was all because
The
of
tape. The tape started it all over because my son, he asked me, "Can I take the tape?" Of course. And then he said, "Can I send it to?" I know a guy on YouTube, and it's Emil Öhman, if you know him. He
Yeah.
put it out on his channel.
There was a rare and obscure heavy metal cassette archive or something like that on YouTube.
And get almost 100 uploads, but somehow Emil Öhman's channels was pushed down.
Yeah, I think it was because of copyrights. I don't know.
I don't know.
But basically, it all started with the cassette, and then it went online, so to speak. And then a couple of months later, we got a call from New York to the
Aaron Thome on Cult Metal Classic.
Yeah.
And
he reached out.
Yeah, and we speak, and he asked if we want to do a record, and of course we want to do a record, but how shall we do it? Can you come over here to the United States? I said, maybe it's a little difficult. Can we make it some easier way? And then he called back and said, I work together with Janne Stark in Sweden from
the old Swedish band,
Overdrive. And and then we talked to him, and he said, I should try to make the best I can with this cassette. And he asked if we can fix the master tapes. But I didn't find that. I'm looking for it in a couple of months with the old studio we was in, and he was alive, but the
masters were gone, basically.
Yeah, the master was gone.
But he did the best he could, sound-wise, with that what he had, basically. And we jumped on it because we we can finally have an official CD and a vinyl and do this the right way. Go out with a bang, just like the 80s. So we were super happy about that.
For a cassette tape that's 40 years old, it actually sounds pretty good still, sound quality-wise. You would expect it to be a lot worse, but it sounds pretty good.
You have a dry attic, Michael. Well cleaned. Even the vinyl records, they're not bent on anything. Look, fresh mint.
Yeah.
That's great. Well, I mean, now that this is out there and people, like the old school fans like myself remember who you guys were in the music. So you have a whole new younger generation today that's finding this band and finding this music for the first time. So how do we follow this up? Are you thinking about re-recording these songs? Are there other songs that were left over from the early days that you haven't gotten around to yet, or just all new music?
Matter of fact, we are just right now in our studio. I have a studio at my house, so this is like the Mistress headquarters, and we have released and recorded and released one old song, like a re-recording, and the plan is to keep on doing that, and also we're working on new material as we speak.
And we hope we're gonna.
All these years later, is it hard to recreate, the Mistress sound from back in 1980, or are you looking to just write, the music that you're feeling right now?
We try to stay very true to the original Mistress sound. So we have we have the same stuff. We have the same amp. We have the same guitars from the 80s, and we try to keep it analog and try to do it like this is the way you guys did it back in the day, and we just gotta give it a facelift and kick everyone's ass.
That's great. Mike, you're just singing now. You used to play guitar with the band also back in the 80s. Is it just strictly singing?
Yeah, strictly singing. But because after we stopped playing with Mistress, I play some other bands. And I just was lead vocal in 30 years in different band. And the last couple of years is many cover bands. So when I try to get the guitar again and sing and make the melodies is the coordination. I didn't.
Yeah, you're noodling around.
Yeah, so I feel like we take in one more guitarist instead, and I just concentrate on the lead sing.
Yeah, you have been busy the last couple of years. You've been singing like constantly on stage, so you got your shit together.
Yeah,
it's worse for Pat here. He hasn't drummed for 30 years. He's just been guarded for 30 years. But he's in the rehearsal every goddamn morning. I haven't even got my coffee yet. Then I get a picture from Pat here. And he's behind the drums. So you can tell that these guys are pumped to be back.
Yeah, I'm sure that's a great thing. But going back to the early days of the band, I mean, what caused the band to break up? I mean, we didn't really get any releases outside of that demo tape, and then it kind of ended. And I think about Sweden back then, they had a pretty good scene, in my opinion. Your Silver Mountain was around, and a lot of other bands were taking place. Was it just too difficult to make it back then without any help, from outside?
Yeah, we lived in a very small town.
You still do.
Yeah, and at the time it was if you shall come somewhere, you have to live in Stockholm or Gothenburg. And we tried to send some cassettes, I know, to Warner up in Stockholm, but I talked with the director many years later. He said, get 200 cassettes
Just
week.
like you said, there were so many bands back then, so it was hard to like promote yourself.
I think
Is it any better today?
The competition is much harder and it's greater, but you can say there's different opinions. You know what I mean? I don't know if it's easier or harder, but the bad thing is, like, if you have a band, you're like pushed, you're forced to be a social media content creator.
Yeah.
And that's not you guys.
No.
So even today it's kind of hard, but we will try to make the music do the talking on this one.
Yes, and it's easy these days to reach out with the music. You have Spotify, you have iTunes, you have YouTube, you have
Everything.
Yeah, many more things to reach out. So our plans in the future is now to make an whole, what's the name? Whole LP,
Full album.
Full album with new songs, but we want to have these 5 songs on the full album too. But we play in them in the new recording, but we try to keep the sounds very close.
Maybe we can like do a double album, like one album with one side is new songs and the other side is the old ones, but re-recorded. That might be actually a good idea.
But the other guitarist Lars, we split the songs at the time, but he said he cannot sing anymore, so I took all the 5 songs on the EP.
Yeah, the old guitarist, he sang some of the songs back in the 80s.
Yeah.
Så det meningen var ju egentligen, vi kan berätta om skrot, det var egentligen bara meningen att köra den.
The thing is that when we started this, I said, there's a great festival here in Sweden. Maybe you heard of it. It's called Muscle Rock. It's like basic heaven on earth. Woodstock in Sweden. I said, I know the guy. If we do this, we can do this one show 40 years later and just do it. And that was kind of like the plan from the beginning. We're just going to do this one gig and we're going to have a good time. So, and then a couple of weeks after the show, and I remember Pat told me about, well, it would be fun to play again.
Yeah. And we want to.
Well, because you're gonna redo the older songs, how hard do you have to work to try to keep them mostly to the original? Because now, years later, there are some new members playing on there, and everything changes in life. So how closely to the original do you want to keep them when you re-record them?
We try to stay as close as possible, but it's not all in our hands. It's so much in the producer's hands and in the mix, who's mixing the stuff. And I think that's key, to find the right person to like mix what we're doing right now in order to have it the way we want it, the way it was back in the day. It's not just press record, man. It's super hard.
I know. So many bands have re-recorded old material, and when you listen to it, it kind of loses that magic that was created when the songs were first written. It's hard to, be in the same place today as you were 40 years ago,
It's almost impossible to get it the same. It's like, it's deep water, man. You got to do it right.
Yeah.
I know what you mean. You want the dirty still in the guitar riffs and that kind.
Our first album is not even mixed. Maybe we should not mix the new songs either. Let's just put it out there.
But it was unmixed, this EP. So we had in plans at the days. We should mix it, but we didn't find any producer. Then we closed down the
it's
band.
not mixed, but I still think it sounds great. Like, don't touch that.
It does.
Yeah.
So this is the way you guys sound exactly what we're hearing. This is raw. And that takes guts. No bands would do that now. Now you're just gonna play it live and just don't mix it.
No.
Yeah.
So
how far along are you in the recording of the new music?
Very close.
Yeah, we have basically 2 songs are recorded, basically,
yes.
And we're working on new songs. Our new guitarist Jukka, he's very creative. He has a lot of time on his hands.
Yeah. But he had a little other school than we have. We are more Judas Priest, except Michael Schenker, that kind. And other guitarists now, new guitarist is
more metal,
more the Purple, Rival Sons, that kind of more, what you say, heavier tyngre.
Heavier music.
Yeah,
He comes
so-
from a heavier music.
Yeah.
So he must. He said by himself, I must think.
I need to buy a flying Wii.
Yeah, that's all.
Being that he's so young and so different than what you guys, are known for, do you kind of have to guide him into where he should be musically to fit in with Mistress, or are you willing to take what he's writing and coming up with and saying, hey, we can work with this and make something out of it?
Of course, we will work with everything, but we try to stay true to what Mistress really are.
Yeah, it's back to the soul, because we love it so much itself, because that's kind of music we grew up with, and not grown up, but you grown up with your father who played for.
I was around.
Yeah. It was not so big that time, so we.
I was not even born yet. I was not even born yet.
Sometimes it smells, but Yes.
I think that's great that, it's kind of in the family, like you kept it that way. And I think that's so cool that that's happening, and I can't wait for this new music to come out. But, now that you have this going on, and you have the festival appearance, is it more important to try to get onto the festival circuit where you can go around to country and play in front of a big audience all the time? Or is it worth it going back to the clubs again, where you are?
No, more festivals is our plan. We played one festival 2 weeks ago.
Yeah, in our hometown.
Yeah,
that was great.
It was the Mandonsprovet.
We are ready to get up on the stage, and we want to expand outside of Sweden for sure.
Yeah.
It would be great to find like a co-headline tour, like in Germany, and like something to start off, like a small van tour, so to speak.
Germany.
We have to do the clubs first.
Yeah. Does it feel like starting over again, because there's been such a gap from when the band was active until now? I mean, you do have the name recognition. People know who the band is, especially the old school people like myself. But does it feel new, fresh, like it's like just starting over again?
Tycker du att det är som det var på 80-talet, eller känns det annorlunda?
Yeah, when we played this festival we have played already is feels like back to the 80s some way, because this young audience who come, they sing our songs with bad English in the lyrics, but they sings every word at Muskelrock.
Yeah, Michael, he forgot the lyrics, and then he could just watch the kids. They sang it for him. It was like back to the 80s, but the audience hasn't grown up. It was just basically the same kids back there.
Yeah, so it's amazing. I love it. So, but when we do the new records, it's a little better and tighter sounds, and I think people in our age who like heavy metal, they speak to them too, because I think many of the young people, they like the old sound so much, so they don't want to us to change anything. So,
yeah, we had some arguments where you changed that chorus, can't do that.
And you change that, you don't sing so.
Actually, you're singing like this on the second verse.
Yeah.
Oh, God.
We tried to stay as close to the original as possible.
Sure. So much has changed over the last couple of decades in music. When you think about when the band started, did you say to yourselves, we have to, sing in English, not our own native language, because we want to appeal to the American audience, the United Kingdom audience, and stuff like that? Because that's where the scene was really big and taking place at the time. Now, everything is over in Europe. Europe is like the main hub for heavy metal, and the United States and the United Kingdom kind of have fallen by the wayside as far as that music goes. So, was it a concerted effort back then to sing in English to appeal to a larger audience?
Var den engelska för att fler skulle förstå?
Yeah, at the time, I'm a Swedish band. They sing in Swedish, but our plan was all the time we want to reach out to the world, of course, and that's for us naturally is to sing in English. But at that time we was not so. Vad säger man, noga med alltså texterna, de är inte korrekt engelska.
I hope if an English teacher would watch the lyrics, they would say there's a lot of trouble going on here. But they did their best. He's been better. I try to teach him every day. Sometimes.
Yes, and he hits a teacher, so I trust on him. So yeah.
Listen, I was born in this country, and you speak it better than I do, so don't worry about it.
That's right.
But yeah, but what, like even like a band like Accept coming out of Germany back in the day, they had trouble translating it into the right language that the English language. And Wolf Hoffman's wife used to write all the lyrics for them because she had better grasp on it. When you read some of those lines, like wow, what the heck were they? What were they talking about? None of it made sense, but it was all about the music.
The songs and the lyrics is what I have noticed. It's people like our accent, our English when we speak it. So
Yeah.
we have a song called "Ready for Attack" that we sing in the refrain in reverse
the chorus
every morning, but every morning instead. Every morning,
Yeah.
and for every morning. So.
Yeah, you're kind of bending the rules there, but that's what we do.
a little on purpose, so we have little accent for to make it more exotic. We think,
and the lyrics they're so straightforward.
Yeah.
They're not complicated. They're easy to remember, easy to sing along to. Doesn't fuck around. It's just straight on the point.
And that just make it so magic when
you don't have to write a book every song.
The first festival, they sing along all the time. With the band who have not been on stage for 42 years, and I sing it. I get some
goosebumps.
Goosebumps, yes. So it was magic. Yeah.
It absolutely was. So, I mean, we're halfway through 2025. What are the plans for the rest of the year? Just to kind of wrap up the record and maybe for a release in 2026 next year?
Yeah, I think that would be a sign. Yeah, but hopefully we will be on stage a couple more times this year, and hopefully release like a video and 2 songs, maybe 1 song at least.
Yes.
We're saving the powder for 2026 for sure.
Yeah. This year
that's a great thing.
We have club
gig. Yeah,
club gigs, and we have some festival gig in pipe this year. Just to get the feeling on stage together, try to manage together. We have
we need to go to work.
2 new guitarists we have to fill in with and find the magic, even visional. It's very important too. So you're not standing like a couple of us playing the cover bands. This is another here. All other things. So we want to perform a professional show.
Like I said, pyro was a big thing back then. It still is. We're working hard on the visuals. We try to really work on our stage moves, and we brought some on pyro to our last gig. We were the only band who had that. But we think that it's not just a show for sound. It's also you need to have something to look at. You need to put out a show. That's what really makes it great. You can't just go up and stand and play. You need to really be there and give the audience a show, and that's important for us.
It's true. A lot of bands forgot about the show part of the music business. They just focused on the music. But when you're seeing a band on stage, you want to see that visual. You want to see the pyrotechnics or the lighting and everything else to make it a full show. And a lot of bands just don't do that no more.
Yeah, I don't care how fast you can play or how much your guitar costs. Spit me in my face and tell me I'm stupid, and let's play rock and roll. And that's the kind of attitude you need.
And the most important thing that you can show the audience that you have fun when you play. You have fun in the band. You show them. You laugh on the stage, and you make it a family with the audience.
We are.
It's our business.
It is our family. It's your son is playing.
Yeah. Well, my son plays in the band.
Yeah, he brought his son.
Oh wow.
So Freddie is a member half, and my son is in my son, so he's a half. So we are
basically a 4-piece.
We are 4-piece. Yeah.
Well, I'm really feeling old now when the kids are starting to take over the band.
Yeah, I have to, pull him in the ear.
Just gonna buy my time here.
Yeah.
That's it. Well, listen, guys, I had a great time talking with you today. We're going to air on this Sunday night show, and I cannot wait for this new record to come out. I know it's going to be great, especially if it's even this close to the original. It's going to be a phenomenal record.
Thank you so much for having us. This was so much fun.
And if you want, we can send you when we finish, and we wait to put it on Spotify. We can send it to you. First.
Yeah, when we have a new song ready, you will be the first one to know.
That sounds great. I can't wait for that. Freddie, Pat, Michael, thank you for everything. It's been great talking to you, and I can't wait. Maybe one day you'll get here to New York City and I get to see the band live right here in my hometown.
That's the dream.
I'm going in 2 weeks. I'm going to fly over New York. I'm going to the States about 2 weeks.
You can wave.
I can wave from the sky.
I'll wave high. When I see the big plane up ahead, I'll give you a wave. All right. Take care, everybody. Have a great night.
On Monday, the 8th, Tuesday the 8th, sometime.
I drop a church.
It'll happen soon. But guys, take care, man. The best of luck with the band. Such a fan.
Yeah.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Take me back where I came
by Mistress was Charity. I want to thank the guys for that interview. We're going to get to Tommy Lee. I got to give him a call in about 10 minutes. We're going to have time for maybe one or two more songs before then. Has anybody noticed that when Black Sabbath announced, this final show, which I think is like the third time that they're going out there doing a final show? I mean, it is all the original members, and, Ozzy's in bad shape, so who knows how it's going to turn out. But when they announced it, it was called Back to the Beginning. It was supposed to be the final Black Sabbath show. Then it sort of morphed into Ozzy's Goodbye, and then more bands came onto the bill, and now it's Back to the Beginning, Ozzy's Final Bow. They just added that in this week. So, that's Sharon Osbourne. I mean, she couldn't just leave it alone as Back to the Beginning, going back to the original days of Sabbath and doing a couple of songs if they could even get that out of Ozzy at this point in time. She had to stick in that, Ozzy's Final Bow at the end. I wonder how the rest of the Black Sabbath guys feel about that. They're probably used to all that bullshit with Sharon Osbourne. They just kind of tolerate it or have to deal with it because they need to have Ozzy around to do it. But I don't know. They could have just left the name alone. There's no reason to change the name. That's just me. All right. Christian wanted to hear Excalibur, City of Light. So let's get that on for him. And you know what? Right after that, we'll do a Flood song off of his solo record. And then we'll get Tommy on the phone. So here you go. Excalibur first.
City of Light.
Street, traveling all around, and to feel the heat. One town, yeah, you're on your road, ain't no way
right, Tommy Lee Flood solo band Flood, his solo record Flood, Best Is Yet to Come. Heaven and Hell are releasing that. Actually, it already is released. So let's get Tommy on the line. Let me bring up his number here, and we'll get this interview going. So just bear with me. Okay, that's not working. So am I missing a number here? All right. You know what? I'm gonna play another song really quick while I bring up the number. I'm seems to having trouble getting the number to come up here. So just bear with me here, and I'll work on this. But in the meantime, how about we do a little Hellhammer with Massacre? All right, there you go, Hellhammer. All right, let's get Tommy on the line here. As you get older, your eyesight starts to fail on you. And I had one too many numbers in there. That's why I couldn't get it to work. So let's make this phone call happen now.
Hello.
Tommy, this is Mike from Heavy Metal Mayhem calling for our interview. You're live on the air. How are you?
I'm doing great. How are you?
Oh, man, I'm doing fantastic. It's a pleasure to have you on here today. And I have to tell you, when Jeremy told me that they were going to release the solo record from Flood, I was like, wow, it's been 25 years and it's going to get a real proper release. That was just incredible.
Well, thank you, man. Thanks for having me on. I really appreciate it.
It's my pleasure. So you must be happy that people have finally got it. I mean, people did hear it back in the day, but now it's going to get a real release, and it's going to bring a whole new life to this record again.
Yes. I mean, it's been a long time coming. I just really I sold it on my website, so it really never had an official release. It was just like, so it's exciting. Jeremy, he's bugged me for, I don't know, a year and a half, to get this thing done, and then finally I was like, okay, well, I'm going to quit screwing around here and let's get it done.
Wow.
But yeah, I'm excited.
I'm glad that that finally happened. So, I mean, when you think about it, 2000 when the record was officially released, the late 90s going into the early 2000s, a tough time for rock music in general, no matter where you were in this world, especially here in the USA. And but I think with this
Oh, yeah.
record, you were doing something a little different. I mean, you weren't doing what I mean. Grunge was really big at the time, and a lot of people were going in that direction. Even traditional metal bands were going there. You went in a completely opposite direction, and I think you were doing something pretty different and unique at the time when this record came out musically.
Yeah, I really, I mean, a lot of bands were trying to change gears, and go grunge and keep up, with the whole new movement. I think a lot of fans could see right through that. So
Yeah.
I just thought, you know what, I don't necessarily want to do something, that has an 80 timestamp because nobody was digging 80s rock anymore. And I just wanted to do good tunes. I thought, man, if they're just good tunes, I'm just going to be me. I'm gonna write songs that come naturally to me. I'm not going to try to force anything, and I was really trying to steer away from. I mean, I do realize some of the songs do still have that feel, the '80s rock feel, but without completely betraying myself and our fans. I mean, I just wanted to do something that was different and fresh, but it wasn't alternative. It was something that and I mean, honestly, I think there's a lot of the songs on the disc, that you can play them and they still hold water. You know what I mean? Even after all these years, they still sound great.
Absolutely. And it's true, but you know what? People that are going to say, he was in band shit that was completely different than this, a different sound, but you can't go back to that. You can't repeat what you did in the past, and you were moving on from all of that into a whole different genre and a different style. But you're right, it does work, and the songs do hold up today. And I think that's true with any good song. If you write a good song, it doesn't matter how many years later down the road you play it, it's still going to be a good song.
That's right. Yeah, and that's exactly it. The one thing I've never done is even in Banshee, when you listen to the three Banshee albums, you'll never hear one song that I wrote that sounds like the last song. And it's really easy when you're signed on a major label, and then all of a sudden you do Shoot Down the Night, for instance, and they want you to do 10 more Shoot Down the Nights. If the more successful the single is, or the MTV video or whatever, and they're just, yeah, give us 10 more Shoot Down the Nights. And we were just not that kind of band, and I refused to rip myself off. So when I met Lee Jackson after Banshee split and we all went our own ways, I just thought, this is a chance for me to start doing things that and writing songs that I really, when you're on a major label, you're like, everything you're doing is like, well, is this Banshee? We can't stray too far away, from what we've done, but, we still have to be Banshee, and our fans expect a certain sound and everything. So it was a chance for me just to totally like, hey man, I'm not going to be pigeonholed anymore. And I'm just going to do this, and, we'll let the chips fall where they may, and we'll just see what comes out of it. So it was fun. I got to sing in keys that I never sang in. I got to use and explore different vocal textures that I never really got to use in Banshee. So it was cool.
Oh, absolutely. Do you think if the metal scene of the '80s did continue on throughout the '90s, and you were still out of Banshee at that time, would you have been able to write this kind of music if that music was still popular? Would you have found yourself in the position you were in to write the kind of music you were writing for the Flood record?
I doubt it because, me and Terry Dunn, the guitar player for Banshee, he was the primary riff writer, and I always wrote the lyrics and the melodies. And in some cases, like Shoot Down the Night, that was my song, Lock, Stock, and Barrel. But for the most part, Terry would present, I mean, obviously Bill Westfall had some contributions. He came up with Precious Metal. I wrote that with him. And Desire, wrote that song with Bill. And Memories, wrote that song with Bill. But for the most part, it was me and Terry. And Terry just has his style would have never really allowed me to write the kind of music that I did on the Flood disc. He's just not that kind of writer.
Yeah, you have to know who
So
you're working with and what you're writing. But for people that aren't familiar, let's work our way up the flood by going like to the beginning days of Banshees, somewhere in the mid '80s, Kansas City. I mean, how did that all come together? Were you guys in previous bands that were kind of popular at the time, or was this the first real group for all of you?
no, well, I have to say, Terry, he had been in several local popular bands. One of them was Grand Max, and when I met him, he was in a kind of, they were original, but they also did covers, and that band was called Frodo, and I was in a touring band called Lick the band. And we were original slash cover tune band because that's what you did back in the early '80s to get
Sure.
gigs. You had to play covers. It was a free 1 hour sets, 5 or 6 nights a week. We toured. We played the AAA rooms, like One Block West, Fat Jacks up in Omaha or Council Bluffs, and played the Rockers down in Phoenix. Those Institutional Rock out in Colorado Springs. That was kind of like the tour that you were on. And basically, I cut my teeth in the Lick, and started to feel, like I was writing better and better. And at that time, that was my first band that I was in. I just went from like a drummer to bam, all of a sudden I'm a singer in a really popular band that they'd already been out and had songs on the radio, and they were very seasoned. So they kind of groomed me, and they paid for my vocal lessons. They had a gal cut my hair, they made me wear makeup, which I never wore makeup before. And they actually had a tailor come in and make my stage clothes, so they had a backer and money and everything. And then when I toured through Kansas City is when I met Terry, and he was, we had a night off. We played here 4 nights, and on our night off, a bunch of, the entourage of people that you have when you're a popular band, they said, "Hey, let us take you down to Westport," which was a really happening part of Kansas City. And our best band, in Kansas City that everybody loves is called Frodo, and they're playing down at the Lone Star tonight. So we went down there, and I mean, the first thing I thought it was, the band was good, but when I heard Terry play, he was like Randy Rhoads. I mean, his one of his idols was Randy Rhoads, and I mean, he could play Randy Rhoads. His sound was like that. And note for note. And I just thought, God, if I had a guitar player like that, I could go all the way. But, I was very loyal, and I was committed to my band, and I certainly would have never just ditched that band or anything like that. But it was weird. It was a couple months later, I had a girl come up. We were playing up in Council Bluffs, Iowa, and she came up and handed me a note. She goes, "You remember Terry Dunn?" And I said, "No, who's that?" She said, "Well, that was the guitar player in the band Frodo." I said, "Oh, yeah, I remember that guy. He was really good." And she goes, "Well, he's left that band. He wanted me to give you his contact information, and he would like you to consider coming down and meeting with him and putting a band together. He's done doing covers. He wants to do something all original again." And lo and behold, as fate would have it, within a month I was in Kansas City, had a meeting with him and some people down here that kind of got behind the band, and bam, one thing led to another, and we were looking for drummers. We had an issue finding a bass player, so I had the guitar player from the Lick. He actually came down and became the bass player for Banshee, Chuck Hopkins. And we had a drummer that was in Frodo, but this guy, he was a really nice guy. Don't get me wrong, he was friends with Terry. But coming from the Lick band, I had a smoking one of the best drummers in the Midwest, and I was like, dude, I'm not gonna. If I'm starting over from scratch, it's going to be the ultimate band, and we are not going to go down. We're going up, and we just need to audition, new drummers. And Kent Burnham was 19 years old. He'd really never had a professional music career. I think he had a little band called Crypt Keeper, but they really hadn't played, I think maybe one or two little shows, like at a youth center or something like that. It was just in the infant stage, I would say. But he said, "Hey, I want an audition," and we're like, "Okay, this kid wants an audition." He showed up, and on the very first night, we literally wrote "Cry in the Night," "We Want You" off of "Cry in the Night, and we nailed it and put it to bed the very first time he showed up. And and it is recorded on Crying the Night as it was that night. So we knew we had our guy. He was killer, and he was good looking, and he was motivated, and he didn't really, he was so young. He was just like, he really looked up to me, and he looked up to Terry, and he was just like there to learn, So it was very easy to, groom him, So it was kind of like what the Lick Band did for me. I was able to do, for Kent, and I've done that in many artists that I've worked with in the past. Like the guys in the Flood, they were young and energetic and very talented, and were there to learn, and I've always believed, like, hey, you put somebody in a professional environment and you groom them, and then they'll blow up and become a star, and that's been kind of like my formula for, so Banshee was formed in '85. We went in the studio at the beginning of, at the end of '85. We went in the studio around September. We had our first half a dozen tunes that we had written, and I don't even think we had picked the name Banshee yet. I was like, look, I'm not worried about picking a name. I'm worried about writing the songs and putting the band together. So once we get the tunes and we're in the studio, we can think about, picking a name. And so we eventually got to the point where it was like, okay, we got to come up with a name. So everybody go home, make up your list, and then come back to practice, tomorrow night. So we all sat down the next night, and, there was names like, I remember Savage Grace, Cowboy X. There was all kinds of names, right? And then the guy, there was a very popular record store chain here in town called Seventh Heaven Records. And they were the one stop here in the Midwest. Well, it was right next to our warehouse. We actually rented our warehouse from, it was the old Seventh Heaven Record Store warehouse. And the daytime manager came walking in, and he said, hey, man, he had a big joint. He's like, I got the perfect name for the band. And we go, okay, what? And he goes, Banshee. We just watered up our list and threw them in the trash room. We became Banshee right then and there.
Wow, that's great. Because everybody who comes up with a name for the band in the band wants to be their name, to be the name of the band. But having somebody on the outside come up with it, that worked out well because it was a great name. It worked. I love when you were talking about Kent, and he was good looking too. And back then, people,
very good looking, man.
They'll laugh at you now, but you had to be good looking. Listen, if you're going to be in a death metal band or a thrash metal band, you could be anything you want to be. If you're going to be in a band that's looking to have commercial success, you had to have everything: a stage show, the look, be good looking. Look, I remember with Y&T when Leonard Hayes was out of the band, their drummer, and in an interview they said they needed somebody good looking to play the drums because they wanted to get to the next level because the other guys were pretty good looking, and that it's a shame that you have to think like that, but back then you really did.
Yeah, it really was a very image conscious industry, and I mean, so Chuck Hopkins wasn't, he was Oriental, so he had a unique look. He wasn't, necessarily a really good-looking guy, but he was Oriental, with loudness. They had great success, so it was kind of exotic looking that we had an Oriental, Japanese bass player. But he was only in the project for about a year, I think. And then the girl that he was with, she decided, or she got a job promotion, and she was going to have to move to California, and he just didn't. He lost his faith. What can I say? She was a good moneymaker, and we were used to eating one wimpy burger a day and living in this warehouse with no heat, no air conditioning. And she goes, well, you can move back in the warehouse with Tommy Lee, or you can come out to California with me. And man, we were best friends since high school, and I just couldn't believe that he gave it up. And we had put out Crying the Night. It was on our own independent label, Snowblind Records, and it was blowing up. I think we'd sold almost 50,000 units between here and Omaha, Nebraska, which is where the Lick Band was out of. So we were making good money and re-upping, and we had a big hydraulic stage that I designed, and me and Chuck actually did all the welding and training the crew to set it up and tear it down and how to run it during the show. And he was he was vested And then out of nowhere, he said, "Hey, I got some bummer news. I'm leaving the band, but I want you to continue. So I'm going to give you my half of the gear. He owned half of the staging, and and half the PA. And he said, I want you guys to keep going." I said, "Well, it kind of blew me away, but I was like, well, Chuck, if anything ever happens, I'll make sure you get your share." And we knew Bill Westfall was a really badass, really good-looking bass player, and he had played offstage keyboards for us at a couple Banshee concerts, and we knew he was a good keyboard player, but he was a phenomenal bass player, and he was really good-looking. But once again, I'm very loyal. I don't have it in me to just say, "Hey, dude, you're out. This good-looking bass player blows your ways in." I'm not made like that. And it just happened. It happened, and I mean, literally 30 days after Chuck Hopkins left the band, and we worked in Bill, and Bill already knew the songs. So Chuck's like, "Well, Bill, I can sit down with you and show you the tunes." And Bill's like, "No, I got this, dude." So Chuck moved, and I mean, in 30 days he was gone, and boom, Brian Slagle from Metal Blade Records got a hold of one of the Banshee albums out at a record music convention out in California. I think it was Concrete Foundations or Concrete Forum, something like that, And I just had a friend of mine that used to distribute our albums to a store out of Johnsonville, Tennessee. And this guy sold a lot of metal out of his little record store, and he just happened to be out in California at one of these music conventions, and Brian Slagle said, "Hey, who's the hottest selling thing you got? You sell a lot of metal. We recognize your store." He said, "Well, actually, the hottest thing I'm selling right now is a band out of Kansas City called Banshee." He said, "Really?" And he gave him a copy of Crying the Night. Well, then Brian Slagle, they loved it. They were getting ready to put out the Metal Massacre Volume 9, which is a compilation of 10 different artists. And so our fan club address was an Omaha address, and we hadn't used that address in a year. We were doing everything out of Kansas City. I originally ran all the business out of Omaha, but when we re-upped on our cassettes, we never changed our address in there. It was an old address, and we didn't even think about it, that we need to change that lithography, and make it a Kansas City PO. So he tried to get a hold of us through that. He realized it was not a working address. He called the record store down there, and he said, "Look, we're trying to get a hold of this Banshee band that you gave us this album." And he said, "All I know is a guy comes in here from the mountains." He said the singer's his best friend, and he lives in Kansas City. So Brian Slagle went through his Rolodex. He found a card from a guy that did some video work with Dallas when Dallas was on Billy Sheehan was on Metal Blade, and he called him up. That guy just happened to be our main stage manager. And he said, "Hey, you did some work for us. We're trying to track down this band Banshee. Have you ever heard of them?" He goes, "Yeah, the singer's my best friend. I work with the group." So he called me up, and I was painting a house or something, but he paged me. There was no cell phones back then, but
True.
it said 911, so I knew that meant, call him right away. So on my lunch break, I called him, and I said, "What's up?" And he said, "Dude, Brian Slagle from Metal Blade Records is going to call you tonight at 6 o'clock. So you guys need to be home." So I called the band up, and I said, "What do you mean?" He told me the story, like he's got a copy of your album, and he wants to talk to you about it. So, boom, we were all sitting at my house. The phone rang right on, 6 o'clock on the dot. And it was Brian Slagle, and he said, "Hey, we're doing this album. We would like to put We Want You on there." And boom, that's how it all kind of started out. Within, several months after that, they ended up inking, Crying the Night. They leased it for 5 years, and it went out worldwide. And we were one of the best new heavy metal bands of 1988 off that record.
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
and that's how Atlantic Records kind of stepped in. Metal Blade offered us 6 albums. Atlantic offered us 10 albums, and they had put together the brand new Titanium label. And Jason Flom was heading it up with Paul O'Neill and Andy Setcher, and they're like, we were the second band on that label. Jakey Lee and the Badlands, they were the first band. and Banshee was the second band that was signed to that label. So it was kind of like we were just at the right place at the right time with the right sound, I guess. But, you know, I always had a gut feeling like if we move to LA, we'll just be another minnow in the ocean, you know. There's so many bands going to LA. Everybody was going to LA. Even bands from New York was going to LA, you know.
Sure,
And I
we
just
had a
thought,
good scene here in New York too back then.
oh, absolutely. You guys had a great scene out there. A lot of great bands, man, from the East Coast. But, you know, and out here you could afford a warehouse. You could afford to have a sound stage, you know, because of our reputation, the Interior's reputation, and who we were and what groups we came from. We were able to go in and broker really incredibly cheap studio time. Where if you were out in a Westlake studio, East Coast, West Coast, you were going to pay $100 and something to $200 an hour. Well, people wanted us in their studio so they could say, "Hey, we got the Banshee Boys in here." So they would give us studio time for $20 an hour, as long as we were at night. And they never watched the clock. They just wanted to do a great album. So I was like, God, we can afford to do all these things here that we couldn't really do if we were, you know, if you go to LA or New York, you could be struggling just to survive, you know, and if one guy doesn't pull his weight, it could break the band up, you know. If you're out there working and slaving and one guy doesn't have a pair of shoes or doesn't want to go get a job, I've seen it, man. It could literally, the stress of that can break a group up. And so I thought, you know what, I would rather be a big fish in a small pond and make enough of a splash to where we can create sensationalism that maybe we can bring somebody to us, because there was a great music scene here. There was fabulous fan base here. People were totally into it. There was a great scene, lots of original bands. There just wasn't any industry here. So all this talent around here, you know, was just like spinning their wheels thinking, we're never going to get signed in Cowtown, USA. So I just always had this gut feeling, and it was just, I guess, common sense. I mean, man, if you can make a big enough splash in a small pond, you'll be noticed before you're the minnow in the ocean. And Metal Blade, boom, it just happened. And then within a year, we were on MTV with Atlantic Records. And basically, people think it happened overnight, but it really didn't. It still took, 2.5, 3 years before we were on Headbangers Ball. But that's relatively quick from the time the band was formed. And when I look back on it, I think, yeah, that was it went just like that. And boom, it was just all very exciting. But so that's basically how Banshee started, and
But it did go, but Tommy, it did go quick when you think about it. Maybe not at the time that you were living in that moment, but like you said, if you make that big splash, somebody cut us. First Metal Blade came to you. Not only did they come to you, but they had the wrong address, and they still went out of their way to shut you down.
Really weird, man.
To find you, to get you, and then that led to Atlantic. And you're talking now. This is like 88, 89, going into 90. Those 2 or 3 years. And the scene hadn't changed yet. It was still very strong, still very vibrant, still happening.
Yeah.
So when you think about it, you made the right move. You didn't relocate and bankrupt yourselves, or maybe break up the band, for different reasons. You stood your ground. Because I said the same thing too. When the band started out, when I first heard about Banshee, next thing you know, Crying the Night is coming out. Then the second record is out. Then the third record is out. And that is kind of quick when you think about it. So I mean, whether it worked out or was good a bit, I don't know. But you're on Atlantic Record now. I mean, Titanium, which was a subsidiary, but it's still Atlantic Records. And there was a story that went around years ago.
God, here it comes. Here it comes, baby.
It might be heavy metal folklore, but I got to get the truth out of you. There was a story that you were knocking boots with the girl in the video who happened to be going out with somebody from Atlantic Records, maybe the A&R person or somebody over there, and that's why they dropped you from the label, because that's like a Motley Crue type of story.
Hey,
I don't know if it's true or not, but it makes a great story.
It does make a great story, and the only reason it doesn't, it used to really bum me out because it's so far from the truth. I mean, there's elements about that story that are true,
all right.
But as far as like fucking or knocking boots or whatever, that didn't happen. The girl was in the video, and if you look at the Shoot Down the Night video, it's you will never see her in a scene with me. They shot her scene separately. They shot the band separately. We were all together on the same location up in Bear Mountain, right by West Point Military Academy, is where we shot that video up in the woods. And Jason Flom, he was madly in love with this gal. Her name was Michelle Levine. She was an up-and-coming actress. She used to be either dated or was engaged to one of the guys in White Lion, which was another one of Jason's bands. And then they ended up breaking up, and then, Jason, was heavily pursuing her, but they were just friends. And I remember asking her, I said, well, it was obvious to us when we'd all go out to dinner or whatever that Jason was in love with this gal. And she was not in love with him. She would act like his friend. He would obviously act like there was something more. But, it was painfully obvious. But, so I one day we were having lunch. She came by the studio to listen to how the record was coming along. And I said, hey, take me across the street. I'll buy you lunch, because I had a little bit of time before I had to start singing my first day in the studio. They had finished up the tracks, and they were getting the rough mixes ready for me to start my vocal tracks. And I said, I got about an hour. And I told John Mathias, he was the producer, and I said, John, I'm going across the street with Michelle to get something to eat. So we went across the street and got a bite to eat. And I came back, and I remember asking her, I said, well, where's Jason? We haven't seen him. And I think it was probably at least, 10 days into the project. We hadn't seen him since the first day we were in New York. And here's what's odd. This is what's really odd. So Jason Flom picked me up at the airport in a limousine, me and my manager. He made my band ride in a cab to the apartments that we were going to look at. And then that night, the very first night, we were out at the Hard Rock Cafe. It was Jonathan Blank from Blank and Blank, New York, Andy Setcher, Paul O'Neill, Chris Ellis, our manager, Jason Flom, Michelle, and the band. And it was, the whole damn conversation was like, Jason was like, Tommy Lee Flood this, Tommy Lee Flood that. Tommy Lee Flood's never been to New York. Every time I know, Tommy Lee Flood brought some dishes. He's going to do some cooking. I did, because I wanted to save some money. So I did bring some guys. And I'm a damn good cook, by the way, Mike. I'm a good cook. So he goes, well, Tommy's a really good cook, and he made clothes for John Bon Jovi, and it was just on and on and on. So when Jason gets up and he goes to the bathroom, the guys in my band were looking at me really weird. And it was the most weirdest vibe, dude. It was so weird. And I said, hey, I just want to say right now, Banshee's about 4 guys. We all worked our ass off to get here. It's not just about me. It's about 4 guys. Because I could feel the band just, like, glaring at me and going, what the fuck's going on? We all were like, what the hell's going on?
Well, they probably thought they were grooming you for a solo project. You know what to
Dude,
go off on your own. You know what I mean? That's what's going to come up.
Mike, I'm telling you, it was I'm just at that point, I was innocent. Okay. I was innocent. Okay. When I say innocent, I'd seen a lot of stuff, but I've never seen that kind of stuff, where it was just so weird. It was overwhelming. And I said, hey, Banshee's about 4 guys. We all worked our ass off to be here. And Paul O'Neill popped up, and he said, let me tell you something, dude. Jason Flom believes in Tommy Lee Flood. And as long as Jason Flom believes in Tommy Lee Flood, Banshee's got a chance. And that's just the way it is.
Yeah.
And, dude, it was the weirdest, and that was when we were sitting there, and it was painfully obvious that, Jason would flirt with Michelle, and Michelle would go, oh, Jason, like a friend would, if he said something, like that. And so it was kind of like we just, nobody thought anything about it. And Jason said, hey, Michelle, would you show Tommy around New York City? Tommy's never been to New York City. Would you mind, showing him around? And she goes, yeah, absolutely. I would love to show him around. So one day, 10 days later, we hadn't seen Jason Flom. She pops in with a girlfriend, and she was down doing some acting audition. And she just pops in and said, hey, I just wanted to come in and see how the record's doing. So we were all very excited. Everybody's there. It wasn't just like me and her. It was the whole, Matthias was there. Paul O'Neill's right in the next studio with the Badlands. We're all there. And he John's doing some rough mixes, of course there's no vocals, but the music was really sounding good. And all the tracks were done, with the exception of lead guitar tracks. Terry was still cutting leads, and we anyway, so it was like, okay, John, I got about an hour. I need to eat something, because I'm going to be on for the next 8 hours singing. And once I warm up, I don't want to stop and eat. I kind of like to get something in me, and half digested before I start laying tracks. He goes, yeah, you got about an hour and a half. So anyway, we come back to the studio, and I said, well, where's Jason been? And she goes, well, he's been over in Europe looking at other bands for the Titanium label. Okay, well, tell him we said hey, and he needs to come down and check the music out. And she goes, yeah, I'm picking him up tonight from the airport. I said, well, tell him we all said hey. And she goes, I will. So she picks him up at the airport. Now, Jason at the time was a cocaine addict, a horrible alcoholic, dude, and a horrible gambler. I mean, he was he had an addictive personality. And, at lunch, I was like, well, are you and Jason, dating? And she goes, oh, God, no. I've seen the way Jason treats women. God, he helps me out a lot. He gets me acting auditions. There's been times when he buys my groceries, he pays my rent. And I know the first time that we ever crossed the line, he would throw me aside like a piece of trash. I said, well, I just was curious because he really likes you, obviously. And she goes, oh, I know it, but I keep that right there, so. But, so anyway, when she picked him up at the airport, and she goes, guess who I had lunch with today? Tommy Lee Flood. And you got to remember this. Now, Jason Flom's the one that asked her to show me around New York City. Okay? So when she said she had lunch with me, he flipped out so freaking bad that he literally called the studio. He called my manager. He called Paul O'Neill. He called everybody up and said, you tell that son of a bitch and Tommy Lee Flood if he so much as looks at her ever again, I'll send him and his band home on a fucking bus.
Damn.
I come back from lunch I walk in the studio, and it's just this, and I haven't even started, I started to sing, and all of a sudden, the whole control room fills up with all these people, these concerned-looking people, and I think, well, I know I haven't sang in a couple of weeks, but I didn't think I sounded that bad. You know what I mean? I'm thinking, man, do I sound that fucking bad? And they all come in, and they said, Tommy, you need to come in here right away. And I'm like, okay, what the hell? And I really thought that maybe they didn't like the way I was singing, and I was still trying to warm up or whatever, And I walk in, I go, yeah, what's up? And they go, did you have lunch with Michelle Levine today? And I said, I had lunch with Michelle Levine. I literally told you I was going to go have lunch with Michelle Levine. They said, well, you're never allowed to see her again. I said, what are you talking about? And because Jason Flom has called everybody in New York City and told them that if you ever look or talk to her again, he's going to send your whole band home on a effing bus. And I'm like, dude, I need to call Jason up right now because he was my, he loved me. And all of a sudden, it went from this love to like, he's threatening to cancel our record deal right in the middle of it, And I'm like, dude, I need to call up Jason and let him know he's got it wrong, dude. I would never do anything to disrespect him. I have a beautiful girlfriend. She was a Playboy model. I've been in Playboy magazine and was also an actress. I was trying to get her in our MTV video.
Oh man, it's good to meet you.
And I was like, I would never do anything to disrespect Jason. I mean, we wouldn't even be here if it wasn't for this guy. And they said, don't you dare think that you can. And I had his number. I had his personal number. They said, don't you dare think you're on his level and that you can just call him and talk to him. Don't you do nothing. You just don't do a damn thing. And I always felt like that was the biggest mistake that I ever made in my life, was not calling him up and putting him in check right then and there. Like, dude, you're out of your mind. I don't have any feelings for Michelle. That's your girl or whatever. But I don't have any feelings for her. Nothing's ever going to happen. It's never happened. You got it all wrong. But I was told now, here I'm already going, shit, this guy just threatened everybody in our whole organization. Andy Setcher, he was number 2. Paul O'Neill was number 1. My manager, he's called Jonathan Blank from Blank and Blank, has called everybody up and said, if he ever talks to her again, I'm going to send him home on the bus. So I was like, what guy who does that, right? I mean, you just put several hundred, there's thousands of dollars up, and this whole thing is in swing, and the magazines have been grooming us, for months. And what the hell? So it was really bizarre, dude. I mean, and so my band's all looking at me like, okay, dude, did you do anything with her? And I'm like, are you kidding me? So then all of a sudden there's the band, thinking, what happened? I said, nothing happened, dude. I went across the street and ate lunch. I mean, we're in the middle of Times Square. Where the hell am I going to have wild sex with somebody in a phone booth?
Well, back then in Times Square, you could.
Yeah, you probably could. You're right. Right in broad daylight with the cops standing right next to you. Nobody did shit. But it was really weird. So anyway, the album goes off without a hitch. We finished recording. It turns out fantastic. Race Against Time, really, we recorded that album in 28 days. We had one day off where we went around and saw the sights in New York City. And on the 29th day, the 30th day, we were flying back to Kansas City. We literally did what most bands back then didn't do, Badlands, they were in the studio. I think they were still working on Highwire when we got there, and Highwire when we left. I mean, they had a much bigger budget than us, and they gave Jakey a lot of money, and they were in the studio months and months and months and months. But anyway, great band, great guys. Don't get me wrong. I'm not railing on the Badlands. They're fabulous, man. I used to go out and eat with Ray Gillen all the time. He was super good dude. What a great singer. But anyway, long story short, we were back home.
Gillen knocked boots with Michelle.
Maybe. Michelle was she was from Minneapolis, St. Paul, man. I mean, the thing is I don't think she ever even knew what happened because we were never allowed to talk about it. So what was really weird, now, the story gets even more bizarre. So you talk about fate and all this, man. So we fly back. It takes, several months where we've mixed the album, but it's getting mastered. They flew Krasner Trebas, very famous husband and wife photography team out. They shot pictures, with us for the album cover. And then they picked the first single and serviced, 400 or 500 radio stations with Shoot Down the Night. And then they solicited film companies to shoot the MTV video. So it's funny. So they were taking bids. So the film syndicate was the one that got the bid, and they had like 20 or 30 interns that were working for Guild Points. So they were able to come out and basically do a several $100,000 video for fairly cheap because most of the staff was working for free for their points. It's getting their internship. But they decided they wanted to do, it was the 50th year anniversary of Shoot Down the Night, or of Wizard of Oz. They wanted to do a Wizard of Oz theme with the Shoot Down the Night song, and we're like, oh, hell no, man, we're not doing no fucking Wizard of Oz video. They said, hey, it's the 50th year anniversary. Everybody from Ever Ready Batteries and all these people are doing spoofs. Wizard of Oz spoofs. We're the only thing that's ever come out of Kansas other than the Wizard of Oz is Banshee, so we're going to do this. And then we're like, well, man, we really don't like that idea. We were hoping to do more of a live video or whatever, like we're on stage, right? And they said, well, I guess we don't have to do the MTV video. And we go, oh, hell, man, we love that idea. Because you had to have an MTV video. I mean, that's just the way it is. And we actually had an MTV video in writing. It was a 10-page contract. And Jonathan Blink said, this is the first time I have ever signed a baby band, which is just like they call a baby band your first major debut on a major label. He said, this is the first time I've ever signed a band on their first album that ever got an MTV video guarantee. It's usually something that they see how the single does, and then the management kind of co-ops with the label or whatever. But you guys got guaranteed, you got a guaranteed video. So, okay, so we're going to do a Shoot Down the Night video. So I start pushing for my girlfriend, Brittany Powell, to be, I thought, well, shit, Brittany will come out. She'll do it for free. We can save money. We were always on a budget. They gave us the money, but we're budgeting our hotel, coming and going expenditures, getting the equipment out there. Everything's being on a budget, trying to make the most out of our deal. So anyway, I'm pushing for Brittany to be in the video, and they said, we've already auditioned actresses in New York, and we have an actress. And now we're still trying to find Toto. We're still trying to find Toto. Okay. So we get out there, tell us we got an actress. They've fitted her with her clothes and everything. And we fly out to do the MTV video. And it's months after the album was done. We fly back into New York, and then I'm thinking, man, we've flown into New York twice now, and all I've seen is concrete. Where the hell are we shooting an outdoor video, in the woods? And they said, oh, just a couple hours north, man. It's beautiful, Hudson River Valley and all that. And I was like, oh, okay. And they weren't lying, man. We got out of the city, and it was just absolutely gorgeous.
Yeah.
And we get up there, and the people, they had 2 semi trailers full of stuff that they brought out and set up this enchanted forest where they literally cleared out the side of the slope on Bear Mountain, where they took all the underbrush out. They wrapped all the trees with the cellophane, incandescent cellophane, cobwebs, vines, fake rocks, fake plants. They built a drum riser and made it look like it was a big boulder or something, and they had big light platforms up in the trees that moved, and it was very cool, man. Tiki torches, dry ice. They built a railroad track that went in like a big horseshoe around the whole shoot, and all they did was the camera was on this cart, and it went back and forth. And we went out. It was nighttime, we shot this video. So we roll up. We get our hotel room. They had these 3 hair, makeup, and wardrobe ladies come to each band member's room. They said, look, bring all your costumes and just lay everything you got, jewelry, boots, whatever you got, lay it all out on the bed. And these ladies came in, and they literally handpicked out of all of our clothes. We had several outfits, each one of us. And we used to make all of our own clothes because we didn't want to really look like anybody else. And so we had all of our clothes. That's how I ended up making a coat for John Bon Jovi. He loved my stuff, and I sold him one of my coats. But anyway, they came and they picked the coat, the pants, the boots, the whole thing, and they kind of basically like dressing a Ken doll. They dressed us all. Then we go riding out into the woods, and as it was getting dark, you could just see all the lights in the tree. It looked like in the middle of the woods, like a big UFO had landed. We're just excited.
Yeah, sure.
And we're just like, oh fuck, we're here, dude. It's happening. And in that little town of Highland Falls, dude, it was just this huge buzz. Like, man, there's this big time rock band making an MTV video right up here on the mountain, So the highway patrolman came out. We had a bunch of cadets come from the military academy out. I had a bunch of local guys there. They're all hunters and fishermen. So we were talking about salmon fishing and deer hunting and bow hunting. It was bad. It was so cool. We come rolling up there, and I see this little old lady sitting there next to this dog, which is Toto. And I said, so this is Toto? And she goes, yep, he's a little old to be doing rock and roll videos. This dog was totally deaf, Mike. He couldn't hear a damn thing, so it took him several hours to get him to skip with Dorothy.
Yeah.
Because he couldn't hear anything. Well, then I'm looking around for the actress who's going to be Dorothy. Guess who was there? Michelle Levine.
Oh man.
And I said, and when she heard me say this, and like I said, I know that she really never knew what Jason had done. And I said, what the hell is she doing here? And the producer said, look, we had another girl. I said, I thought you had another actress. And they said, we did. We actually we spent the last 3 hours trying to refit the ruby red slippers for her. And we had to tailor the whole dress and everything. I said, well, what's going on? They said, all we know is we got pressure from the highest people in your label to use this girl. And they're the ones paying for it. So and I kept thinking in my mind, Jason Flom's going to threaten my band
Oh, yeah.
to send me home on a fucking bus and cancel our record deal, and then all of a sudden now it's his girl Michelle's out here, and he's going to use this band to get her, exposure as an actress, just like Bobby Brown and all these, Connie Katane and all these girls were, making it in the music industry. And I really, dude, I was floored. I was just like, oh my God. Well, then I didn't mean for her to hear me say that, but like, what the hell is she doing here? And then she started crying. She's like, oh, and I'm like, look, I'm sorry. I didn't mean, I was just surprised because, there was supposed to be a different girl, and you look great. You look just like Dorothy. I was trying to be nice. Hey, you look just like Dorothy. Everything's good. And she was like, I don't want to do with this heavy metal negativity. And I'm like, look, man, it's all good, girl. Sorry, I didn't mean it in a bad way. I was just surprised. Well, so the first thing I'm thinking is it's Jason Flom, is the highest, pressure from the label. But what it was, dude, was Paul O'Neill and Andy Setcher had the brilliant idea. Oh, they knew Jason was in love with this girl. So if we use her in the Banshee video, Jason will even push Banshee even harder because it will get her the exposure that she needs as a struggling actress.
Yeah.
Well, dude, let me tell you something. You want to talk about backfire? So in the video, when you watch it, you see her. She's looking like she's eyeballing somebody, but it ain't me. She's eyeballing the camera, okay? And then you see me. I'm eyeballing the camera. They go, okay, walk to the camera, look really sexy, and throw your microphone over your shoulder.
Yeah.
So every time I threw the microphone over my shoulder, and it was a real $2,000 microphone, every time I threw it over my shoulder, it hit the same rock, dude. And the production guy read out, hey, man, that's a $2,000 microphone. I said, dude, I'm sorry. There's a rock right there. What do you want me to do? And, dude, I would kind of step sideways and I would do it again. They shot this scene several times where I'm walking to the camera. I'd throw it over my shoulder. Every time, dude, it didn't matter what I did. It either hit this rock or this stump. And finally, he was flipping out so bad that they come in and I said, look, dude, if the microphone's damaged, we'll pay for it. But come on, step back.
Yeah.
We're shooting the scene here, right? But, and so when they edited the video down, they edited it to where she looks like she's looking at me, and I look like I'm looking at her, but yet we were never in the same vicinity the whole night. They shot her scenes during the day, and then when we would take a break and the hair and makeup gals were over there mopping us off and fluffing our wigs, they would shoot her scenes. And so we really, and then after the video shoot, and I mean, we're watching it while you're watching the playback, and man, it was looking really cool, and everybody was very excited. And then the Hit Parader magazine was up there, and there was one other magazine, maybe Metal's Edge magazine. They came up, took pictures, and were interviewing us, and it was so cool. So then we went back to the hotel after we shot till like 7 a.m. We crashed, we got up, and we went to New York City. And the suit and tie guys at Atlantic, we went to Rockefeller Plaza. We went in, and they had this big sign right there as you walk in. Atlantic Records welcomes Banshee. Very cool. And all the suit and tie guys came down and took pictures with us, including Jason Flom, and for all the trade magazines. And so I went up to the gal at the front desk, and I was like, can I have that sign? And she goes, I'll get a ladder and get it for you. And they rolled it up and put it in a nice tube. I still got it, man. I was like, I want that sign. But anyway, Jason come up, dude. He was shaking my hand. He was totally cool and friendly. He's like, well, Tommy Lee, what do you think, man? How did the video turn out? I said, Jason, man, it looks awesome. You're going to love it, dude. Michelle looked just like Dorothy.
Yeah.
Dude, he said, Michelle who? And I said, and right then and there, I knew that he had nothing to do with it.
Yeah.
Nothing. And I said, well, Michelle Levine. And he said, he just turned around and walked away and slammed the door, dude. The whole building shook. And he called down. He said, I want to see the first copy of that fucking video when it's done. And, dude, from that point on, Atlantic Records was doing everything in their power to stop Banshee's success. The only thing that couldn't stop was how well people loved us. Yeah. I mean, every magazine loved us. We were fresh. We were unique. We We didn't sound like West Coast. We didn't sound like East Coast. We were totally our own sound. And the people, when they would interview us, they would say, "Man, you guys, it's interviewing you is just like you're just so like down to earth and all that." And I was like, everybody loved us. That's the only reason we had the run that we did, because these people in their minds, Jason Flom said, "Hey, bury the Banshee album." That's what he said. So they didn't drop us. We were signed for 10 albums. All they did was they didn't do anything. And once it petered out after 9 months, we were on Headbangers Ball religiously. We made the hard 30s several times. Top most requested videos. The top most requested 30 videos of the day. Well, then what happened was they busted. I don't even want to go in there because it puts another group in a bad light. But Atlantic Records had set up a network of people calling MTV to request videos, not for us, for some other band that had more money. And those people would sit around all day long on the hotline calling, redial, because that's when you could request videos.
That's right.
And basically 1 out of 1 million calls would get in, and you got so many calls, and boom, you got to be in the top 30 most requested videos. Nobody was doing that for Banshee, but yet we made the hard 30 several times. Yeah, and we were, Ricky Rackman, we were his favorite new band, and people loved us. So Jason Flom and all these people, as much as they were trying to just turn their back on us, we still managed to survive just out of the love that people gave us. So in that sense, it was a miracle. And people used to say, well, why isn't your label giving you guys any support? This is how dirty it got. When they released the second single, Precious Metal, that was slated to be the biggest song of the album, was Precious Metal. That's why they did Shoot Down the Night first to groom everybody, and then they wanted to follow it up with an ass kicker. And then All Alone was going to be the ballad third, And there was a game plan for everything. So they serviced 400 radio stations with Precious Metal. I had a DJ friend of mine out in New York City, very popular station that we'd interviewed with several times when we were on Metal Blade as well as with Atlantic. And he called me up. I said, "Tommy, what the hell is going on here?" And I said, "What do you mean?" He said, "Man, I got Precious Metal in here, and it's got a parental advisory logo on it, bigger than anything on the whole damn thing." He said, "Man, if my boss sees that, this thing's, the program director, is going to go right in the trash.
Yeah.
We don't do explicit lyrics, parental advisory." And he said, and the artwork that it came with, that's the biggest thing on the whole damn CD is parental advisory, explicit lyrics. And he goes, "There's no explicit lyrics." I said, "There's no explicit lyrics on the whole record. Why would they do that?" And he goes, "All I know is we wouldn't even be playing it right now if I had to make my boss ignore that and listen to the song, because we get so many CDs from so many labels all the time. The ones that have explicit lyrics on them, they're just going right in the trash. You weren't allowed to say anything on the radio back then that was bad."
Yeah.
And it was like, you got to be kidding. So I call my manager, and he's good friends with Jason Flom, so he doesn't want to ruffle his feathers and find out what the hell's going on. I said, "This is going to kill the second single for sure." So, dude, I got on the phone. Okay, that was the worst thing that you could ever do. The band, you're not supposed to go out there and chew ass. You're supposed to make everybody love you. That's your job, making everybody at the label love you. But when nobody was there to fight for us, I had to, because I'm the guy that writes all the lyrics, and it was offending me to know that these people put an explicit lyric label on something that I wrote, and I knew that it was going to kill that CD single. And with no airplay, there would be no follow-up video, et cetera, et cetera. So I called up the gal at Atlantic Records. I said, "I want to speak to the person in charge of the Banshee project at Atlantic." They put this lady on the phone. I said, "Hey, my name's Tommy Lee Flood. I'm the lead singer for Banshee. And I was just made aware that you serviced Precious Metal to 400 radio stations with an explicit lyric label on there." I said, "That's going to kill the album. Why would you do something like that? First of all, I don't write explicit lyrics. I think it's a misrepresentation of me as an artist and Banshee as a whole. But why in the hell would you do something like that? That's foolish. And she goes, well, we just kind of thought it was like, you know, when you tell a kid don't play with matches, the first thing they want to do is go play with matches. And I'm like, what the hell are you talking about? What kids are you talking about? She goes, the kids that play the records on the radio. And I said, lady, kids don't play the records on the radio. They do, but they're not the ones that the program directors are the ones that decide what gets played. And something with an explicit lyric label on it's going to go right in the trash. And she goes, well, I never thought of it, but I can send out 400 letters to all the radio stations and tell them to disregard the explicit lyric label. I said, it's too late because they're all in the trash can.
Yeah, wow.
They're already in the trash can. I believe with my heart and mind that it was a direct target to kill the album. Well, we ended up doing a third record, but the thing is then when we realized that Atlantic they were going to do nothing, we had a 10-album deal. They said, we're going to exercise. We had the third record in the tank, ready to go. And I mean, I personally taken by storm, the third Banshee album, my favorite. You know, I mean, it really is. We produced it ourselves, and we recorded it right here in Kansas City. It's got 2 songs on it that Eddie Kramer produced. And, you know, it's just my favorite. It was the natural progression of where the band was going. And Atlantic Records said, no, you know, we're just going to exercise our 3-year option. I said, well, somewhere in the fine print of a 50-page contract that we signed, we initialed a clause that said that we have to put out a record every year for 10 years. But Atlantic has the option to sit on us for 3 years and not do anything if they choose to do so. Well, Mike, you know as well as me, 3 years, that's a whole new generation of kids.
Absolutely.
That's a whole new generation, Dan. And when you're hot, and everybody knows you, you gotta keep moving, man. You can't, you know. So we decided to get a really well-known attorney, and we spent $50,000 of our own money, and we took Atlantic Records to court to be released, and we were released. And when they released us, you know what they did? They scooped up all the records that they could get their hands on, and they put them in a warehouse. And then nobody could get Banshee at all. And then they sold those records 10 years down the road to collectors who literally built their independent labels off the money they made selling Banshee because it was very rare and hard to find.
Sure,
I mean,
absolutely.
yeah, you know what I mean? So in one sense, it was kind of a bummer, but in another sense, all they did was make it even more rare and unique if you could get your hands. I remember one time I used to have these after-show parties in the Flood Project, you know, and I'd have them at my house, and everybody called my house the house that Rock built, you know, and it was a big party. And you know, pretty much everybody that would come to these parties I knew, but every time, dude, all my Banshee shit walked out the door. Like I would wake up the next day and there was no Banshee. It was gone, everything. You know, and I'm like, holy shit. So I found out I couldn't even get my own music. So I went online on eBay. It was like $100 and something for Race Against Time. And I'm like, you got to be shitting me. Hell, it was $69 for Crying the Night. And then it was $100 and something for Taken by Storm. I'm like, dude, I can't even believe I can't even afford to buy one of my own records, man.
I got a copy here. I'll send it to you. But
yeah, man. Well, now it's not so hard to find it anymore. Everybody's like Terry Dunn. He's been bootlegging it, and it's like, whatever, dude. You know, everybody that was in Banshee can use the name because we split everything equal, even though me and Terry were the songwriters. You know, like eventually when we signed that big deal, the lawyer sat down. He said, well, look, you know, you and Terry, you could make it all. You know, you guys own the publishing. But then what are you going to do if you guys are living in a big house someday and your drummer's washing dishes when he's not on tour? And I go, well, that's not going to happen, dude. He said, it's best when there's really nothing here to split it equal. That way there's no head tripping, you know, down the road if something does come and where there is a lot of money. And there was time, you know, when there was a lot of money coming in. A brief moment in time, but there was a lot of money from Race Against Time. and a little bit of money from Crying the Night. I mean, Ryan Slagle's never been that good about paying his bands, but initially I think he gave us a $25,000 signing bonus, and then the money trickled in. But he's got 2 sets of books, and he's a good dude. I don't have any complaints, but
Yeah,
you know how it goes. You know how it goes.
That's how the business works and how it goes. But
It does.
after taking my
How many records we sell? 5.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Yeah, exactly. That's how they do it. But the band does break up after that record, not long after that record, and it's over with. But when did you decide that after that? Because now it's like the mid '90s now, and the scene is
Yeah.
already starting to change. There's a whole different vibe taking
Yeah.
place. You wind up
Totally.
hooking up with Bill again somewhere down the road, and you got a band going with him, and that's which kind of led to the Flood record.
Right. So Bill, he moved to St. Louis, and he was working in a recording studio down there as the house engineer. And Lee Jackson, very famous. Lee was known worldwide. He was the number. There was 2 designers that were the top 2 guitar amplifier designers in the world. That was Sodano and Lee Jackson. And Lee Jackson, he designed Metaltronics amplifiers back in the day with Zakk Wylde for No Rest for the Wicked. He was using Metaltronics. Paul Gilbert, George Lynch, they all used Lee Jackson's amplifiers. So here he was, a fabulous guitar player, but nobody really knew him for his guitar playing. They just knew he was the guy that came up with everybody's sound. So he would build the rack and the guitar amp. So like when you listen to like George Lynch and he's got his own sound, Lee's like, well, this is the sound that I created for George Lynch. And he would hit a couple knobs and boom, that was George Lynch. Here's what I did for Zakk Wylde. He worked on No Rest for the Wicked when Ozzy picked up Zakk. He was in the studio every day giving Zakk that sound. So he was in St. Louis with the St. Louis Music Group, which is a big company down there they make Ampeg bass amps, Crate, and 50,000 other pieces of musical gear is all manufactured at the St. Louis Music Group. It's a conglomeration of companies that make all this music equipment. Well, Ampeg knew they had the world #1 bass, right? I mean, that's hard to get a better bass amp than an Ampeg. They're world known. You know what I mean? So, but they were seeing all these other companies get into the amplifier, guitar amplifier business, and they actually recruited Lee Jackson to come out there and help them design the Lee Jackson Signature Series Ampeg amp. And so Bill ends up meeting Lee Jackson, and then Lee had a nice little recording studio in his house, and he just lived south of St. Louis, and he'd been out there for a year or so designing these amps. And they hooked up, and they started demoing some material. Well, then Bill called me up. He said, hey, man, how about I'll pay your way. You come down here, meet Lee, and, cut some vocal tracks. I've got all the lyrics written and everything, And I was like, okay. I wasn't really doing anything, and it had been about a year since Banshee had split up. I was like, I'll come down. So they paid for my gas. I came down. Lee was very cool. Bill had written these songs with Lee, but, they weren't arranged very well because Bill he was not a big songwriter, you know what I mean? And he never wrote any lyrics. And he had some really good lyrics, and some of the melodies weren't bad. But all the songs were just like already recorded, so there was no way to go in and like change the arrangement, you know what I mean? Like, well, hey, these are good demos, but let's go back in once I start to cut the vocals and all that. Bill had written, he had a word for every beat of the song. I mean, it was like way too many words. So, but it, like I said, it was his first attempt at writing lyrics and so on. So I was like, well, Bill, we got to cut some of these lyrics out. There's just too many words. You got a great song idea here. The melody lines are pretty cool, but let me just do my thing. That's what I do. And Bill was firm. He's like, dude, if you got to sing it the way I wrote it, and that's just the way it is. And I was like, okay, I think these songs are not arranged, but okay, I'll sing it the way you wrote it. And I did. And they were very excited. It came out. I mean, I'm a singer, so
yeah.
And it sounded cool, but it was definitely very premature. Like I would never shop that, because at that point in my career, I'm thinking I've got a handful of really good, solid connections. They're waiting to see what I come out with. And what I come out with cannot be anything less than what I've already done. I've got to come out with something that's just going to blow people's minds or be completely, professionally done. They might not like it, but at least it won't be because it's not professionally laid out like a real songwriter lays out and arranges and produces. And so I did, they were paying for me, so I did it the way Bill wanted it done. Very hard-headed. I would think that Bill Westfall, out of anybody, would have realized, hey, dude, I am your singer from Banshee, not McFly. Hey, McFly, come on. But, whatever, McFly. But anyway, so I did it, and so they were all excited, and they were packaging it up, and they were going to send it out to all their connections. And Lee was like, well, dude, who are you sending out to? And I said, nobody. He said, what do you mean, man? He was offended. What do you mean? You don't believe in this stuff? It's killer. And I said, dude, I'm telling you right now, it's not ready. It's not ready. I'm not going to waste my connections and send out something that's premature. I think we're onto something very cool here, but come on, man. We got time. We got a studio. Let's do this for real. I mean, let's take the opportunity because we're not being charged any money to use your studio. It's not a industrial quality formatted studio, but it's great to do demoing. And let's just take our time until we have it exactly the way we want it. And then let's go into a real studio and pay some money and do this and make it sonically, industrial format.
Yeah, why rush?
No, man, it's already there. It's great. You're wrong. Well, guess what? They shopped about, 25 units, 30 maybe promo packs. And every one of them called back and said, hey, we can tell. First of all, we're just going to say this. The singer is fantastic. I'm not shitting you. The singing's great.
Yeah.
The songs are okay. But, we can tell who's ever writing the songs needs to pay attention to consonants and vowel sounds and timing. And as far as the arrangements of the songs, you guys are very premature. But you definitely would say, keep going. You got a great thing going here, but you're too, you haven't been together long enough. 100%. Everything I told him, 100%. And I was like, well, hey, man. So Bill, that shattered him, and then he quit. He ended up bailing. And so I talked to Lee, and I said, look, dude, I think we have something special going on here. So I'm willing to hang in there and rework these tunes and retool them and, make them us, there's some good ideas there, but I've already had plenty of time to think about how I would chop the fat out of these songs. Every song was like 6 or 8 minutes long. Come on, that's what you do when you're in grade school.
Too long for radio.
Every young band wants every song is an epic tale, Viking warrior of woe. The days of Led Zeppelin and all the Pink Floyd and all those, it was not that type of era. There was like everybody wanted 3.5 minute to 4 minute songs because everybody's competing for the slots on the radio.
Sure. And
you don't want to eat up more than your 3.5 minutes because then you're eating into somebody else's slot, right? So it was like all about get in, say what you're going to say, wrap it up in the finale, and get the fuck out and leave them wanting more. It's really how you make a song. You want them to sing that song in their head after they've heard it one time. And you got to do that in 3.5 minutes. You got to make it a hook. You got to make it something that people want to listen to again. So, Bill, he was disappointed and he quit. And then me and Lee decided to keep going. So I called up Kent Burnham. At that point, believe it or not, they were just using a drum machine. I'm like, dude, we're not sending out anything with a drum machine. Come on now. But no, man, it's fine. But anyway, so I called up Kent and I said, look, dude, we're writing some really cool stuff. I want to introduce you to Lee. Would you come down and lay some real drum tracks? And so we went back through. Lee let me have my way with arranging, and I cut out a lot of Bill's lyrics that were unnecessary. A lot of Bill's songs, they didn't have a hook line that repeated itself. So like he wrote a song called Medicine Man. Well, I bet it only said Medicine Man twice in the whole song, and it wasn't in the chorus. So it was just weird, you know. And I told Bill, I said, dude, you know, if you got to have a chorus where you repeat it. And he goes, no, dude, this is what makes it unique and original. I'm not doing like everybody else. I'm doing it different. Well, anyway, I love Bill. God rest his soul. But, you know, like I said, it was his first stab, you know, at writing his own tunes. And then he went on years and years where he wrote some great stuff. But anyway, when he left, we brought in Kent Burnham. I incorporated a keyboard bass player from Omaha, Nebraska, very talented guy, Jim Langan. This guy could sing. I mean, he could sing, he could play bass and keyboards, you know, like he'd play the bass parts with one hand and the keyboards with the other hand, or he would play Taurus pedals, you know, and play his bass. I mean, he was like the workstation, you know. It's like, God, I don't know how guys do that. I don't know. I can do one thing. I can sing. But I'm not the guy that can play guitar and sing, you know. I don't have a split personality, man. But but he came in, and he, once again, young player, had a lot of experience in cover bands and whatnot, had written some original stuff that really never had gone further than Omaha. But man, the radio station up there, my good friends at Z92, they sent me his promo pack and said, hey, this guy could be the dude. And so he came down and we interviewed him, and he became the guy. And I mean, that guy, I mean, we could do anything with Jim. I mean, anything we could create in the studio, he could figure out a way to do it live. And Kent, you know, was always into playing to a click track, so we could do all kinds of cool stuff. And then eventually we ended up getting a guitar player out of North Carolina. He dated a girl I knew that was an airline stewardess.
Not Michelle.
And not Michelle.
Okay.
Not Michelle. No. Not Michelle. It was an airline stewardess that I knew, and she said, hey, I want to introduce you to my new boyfriend. Of course, she had met him when she was flying out of North Carolina back and forth from Kansas City. But he was a hotshot guitar player, and he came in. His name was Hans. He came in as the rhythm guitar player. And then eventually he started sharing lead responsibilities with Lee. But, you know, so that's how the whole Primal Order thing came together. And then we just started to write and record. And, I mean, some of our songs we demoed 2 or 3 times before we actually felt like, okay, this demo, this is the way we're going to do it in the studio for real. We worked 2.5 years getting 18 songs to where we felt like now we have a roadmap for the engineer in the studio where we can say, this is us, this is the song, this is how many instruments are being played on this, so he could break down and delegate tracks and how we were going to produce this in their studio. And then we, you know, I mean, we spent a lot of time, and then we ended up spending a lot of money. But some of the songs that are on the Flood CD are those songs from the Primal Order, which we did the album, and then we went out to work with Howie Weinberg to have it mastered at the mastering plant in New York City. Very famous cat, you know, Def Leppard, and
yeah.
We thought, okay, we're going to work with Howie. So we get out there, and this was right around the time, Mike, where digital technology was coming out, you know, where everybody was analog, like 2-inch tape. Nothing could touch 2-inch tape. Everybody did 2-inch tape. Well, then all of a sudden technology was evolving, you know, music equipment technology, and everybody was saying, okay, digital's almost got that third dimension that analog has. And Lee was, you know, wholeheartedly sold on that. And he was like the guy that, you know, could build a rocket ship to fly to the moon out of stuff from underneath your kitchen sink. So he was like, dude, we're going to record analog and then we're going to mix digital. I said, look, Lee, I'm not going to sit here and argue with you and say I know more than you, but every album I've ever done, we've always done 2-inch tape, you know, to a 1/2-inch tape. We've mixed down on 1/2-inch, you know, we went from analog to analog, and then when you go in and you have AD conversion, AD convert with apogees, and they convert to digital. but it's a special set of machines that they use to not lose that big third dimension that you get with analog. Well, anyway, once again, my opinion didn't matter. Lee was the guy who was so smart and brilliant and technical, and it sounded fine in the studio when we were doing it. Then when we were driving out to New York, me and Lee, listening to it, in his stereo, and I just thought, this sounds like shit. What's wrong with this, man? It doesn't sound like it did in the studio. Well, in the studio, what you're hearing basically is, when you're mixing, you're hearing the 2-inch, right?
Yeah.
Then they burn it. Okay, that's the great mix. And then I was like, okay, we get out to New York, and we're in the studio with Howie Weinberg, and I mean, it's expensive. He's really expensive. Like, I think $1,000 an hour or something, but he's the dude. And we go in there, and he said, "Boy, this is a shame." I'm like, "What do you mean?" He goes, I know how you guys did it because I've been working with some artists that have made the same mistake. But you mixed this from analog to digital, didn't you? And we said, yeah, that's the wave of the future. And he goes, no, not yet. It ain't there yet. You needed to mix this analog to analog, and then I convert with apogees to digital.
Oh, okay.
He goes, and it's a shame, dude, because you guys got some really good stuff here, and I love it. But it's not all lost. He goes, you'll have to go back and remix the record, of course, but the tracks are there. So all you got to do is go back and remix this record, and this is the difference. Here's your thing on digital. Now here's a band that's not even close to as good as you guys are, and they brought in their analog, 1/2-inch tape. Boom, night and day. Huge, small, 2-dimensional, 3-dimensional. It was huge. So we're just like, oh my God, I think we spent like, I don't even know how much we spent mixing those songs down. Those 12, we recorded 18 and we ended up mixing 12 because we were thinking, okay, we're going to run out of money before we got to have money for the artwork and all the lithography and the layout and the manufacturing and the pressing, da-da-da. So we ended up just doing the 12. And then, anyway, so all the way back, Lee's like, we got to put this out just the way it is. I said, Lee, we cannot put this out, dude, the way it is. Got to go back in. I mean, come on, we've come this far, dude. We've worked 2.5, almost 3 years of our lives to make a masterpiece record. We can't put it out like this, knowing that we're just, it's a bummer. We got to go back and remix it. A lot of the automation has been saved, so it's going to save us some time. It's not like we're starting over from scratch. We still have all the track books. We have the automation settings and everything, and it'll just take some time, and it'll obviously going to take some more money. And by the time we got back to Kansas City, he quit the band. He made up his mind that he wasn't going to pay any more money to redo the record. And he said, I'm tapped. I'm not putting any more money up. And we were all paying for this equally. Sure. The only person that had real money was Lee. The rest of us were working our ass off, putting every dime from our weekly checks into the record every week. And everything we did was on consignment, so we had this huge studio debt that we still had to pay off. And they were letting us make payments as long as we stayed on track and made our payments. They don't do that for a lot of people, but they did it for us because they really wanted to showcase their technology that the studio had put together. So they were very bummed out when they found out where we made the mistake of going straight to digital, because they all believed that Lee knew what he was talking about as well. Even though I was in the background going, hey, man, I don't know, maybe this is the wave of the future, but guess what? I've always done it this way. And so Lee ended up leaving the band, and then it was just the four of us. So we were pretty much like thinking, well, that's the end of the project, and I'm not putting this record out like this. I'm not going to do it. I mean, even if it didn't come out, we're not going to put it out. And so the studio called up, and they said, hey, we heard that Lee quit the band, and you guys aren't putting out the record. We heard about the digital issues and all that. We really need you guys to put this album out. We've invested a lot of time and energy, and we've given you guys hundreds of free hours in the studio as well as what we charged you. because we really want our studio, the Mint, to showcase what we're capable of doing, and that's why we had you guys come in here and why we've worked with you so hard. And you know, and we really need this record to come out. We need you guys to finish. And they point blank, they said, look, if you'll let us remix the album, we won't charge you a dime. You could come in. Of course, it was me and the engineer that were mixing. You guys come in. The doc that owned the studio said you can come in as long as it's, you know, late at night. And you and Chris, as long as Chris wants to put in the time, you'll have to pay him his hours, but you don't have to pay for the studio.
Yeah.
So I worked out a deal with the engineer, Chris. You know me. We're friends. We go all the way back to Omaha. But, you know, I'm a working dude right now. I'm not a rock star anymore. I'm working for a living, but I'll pay you this amount. And then we ended up going back and remixing that whole album. He said, with a caveat that I will buy the Apogee conversion units, and we will figure out how to use them. And they literally called out and talked to Howie Weinberg, and Howie told them, look, great album. This is where you blew it. They got to remix it. And that's what we did. We went back and spent 9 months at night, me and Chris Steele, and remixed all those tunes. And let me tell you something, man. It's like by then the band was done. You know, there was no band anymore. We played a few shows to make some money.
Yeah.
And it was obvious, you know, as a 5-piece, we weren't just carrying that sound of 2 guitar players. And, you know, Lee had a very unique style and a very obviously awesome, you know, sound. And Hans was a great guitar player, but Lee was more like over the top and melodic, kind of like a Jimmy Page, you know, a little slappy, but just like a lot of feel. Where Hans was more technical, like an Yngwie Malmsteen, you know, where everything was mathematical, not a lot of feel, but very calculated and precise, like a surgical knife. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So the 2 styles worked really well together, and they complemented each other. So when Hans learned Lee's guitar solos, and he did, he learned them note for note, and he played in a lot of aspects. Hans actually played Lee's solos better than Lee because there was no loose and over the top slop, you know. But there was just something, you know, something was lost in the translation. There was just something about being free flowing and over the top that Lee had that really made it unique. But
Yeah.
anyway, the stress of all that and all the money that everybody had spent and the time that we put into it, and there we have this great, fantastic piece of music, and nothing, didn't do anything with it. So what I did was while everybody was still talking, Hans and me and Kent Burnham, Kent went down the road. He went down the road. We all were still friends, though. Lee moved to Austin, Texas. Never even heard from him again. But he went back into designing amplifiers again because that's where he made his money. But so we all stayed in touch, and then I said, hey, look, we used to do this really good version of I Am the Walrus by the Beatles, and we would do it live, and we really knocked it out of the park. And I said, I've written 3 more new songs, and I want to do that cover of the Walrus, and I will pay in the studio if you guys will come in and lay the tracks. I'll pay you $20 an hour, which wasn't a lot, but, you know, it's better than a kick in the pants.
Yeah.
Come on in while we're still here. Let's do some music. And they loved the songs. We got together and rehearsed a little bit. We went back in the studio, and they were in and out, and then me and Chris mixed those songs down, and I took a couple songs from the original Primal Order album, and I tagged them on to those 4 songs, and I made a 6-song disc, and I called it Flood. Came up with a new artwork package, and this was like around 2002, I think, or somewhere between 2000 and 2002, because the Primal Order stuff was done about 98, you know, and then that whole hangout period and trying to figure out what we were going to do with it. Well, so we never got distribution or anything on that stuff. So put a new package together with 7 songs and put it out, and I won the Independent Album of the Year at the LA Music Awards. I flew out there and performed, and you know, it was like, wow, who saw that coming, right? But I hadn't even released it. The guy out there that does the music awards it was kind of like he got it through Warren DeMartini. Him and the Rat Boys came through town, and John Karabi was with them, and I'd never met John. I'd met the Rat guys, and I got on the bus, and they were jamming. One of my buddies had given them the Flood CD, and they were jamming to the Walrus, and they was like, man, can we keep this CD? We love this, the Walrus, man. That's awesome. And I was like, yeah, absolutely, man. So they ended up handing that CD off to, I'm trying to think of the guy's name, Al Bowman, I think. It's been a long time. But he called me up, and he said, hey, I'm the president of the North American Academy of Music, da-da-da. We got this Flood CD. Would you mind if we submitted it for the LA Music Awards, which is next November? And I think it was like in January or something. I was like, yeah, go ahead, man. I said, man, we love this song, Mindless, and we like the Walrus a lot. So months and months and months went by. And then all of a sudden I got a call, and they said, hey, man, you're up for 2 nominations. You're up for, which means you made it into the top 5. You're up for Independent Rock Artist of the Year, because I had paid for all this on my own. I wasn't under any management or label deals or anything. And you're also up for the Rock Artist of the Year. And we're going to fly you out. We want you to represent the hard rock category. We fly out 10 bands, all different genres, and they represent, their genre of music, and that's what makes up the show. And then in between the groups, we hand out the awards. Would you be interested in representing the hard rock category? I was, hell yeah. So, so I put together a band of guys, killer lineup, all totally different musicians, all great players, man. And, so we did that. And so you get to play 2 songs is what they told me. And, the Academy is going to listen to everybody's music, and then they pick the 2 songs that they want you to perform at the music awards. So they called me up and they said, yep, we want you to do Mindless and the Walrus. So they flew us out there, and we were like number 5 in the slot out of 10 bands. And at the end of the night, they had a panel of like 10 people that were industry people, and they vote who they felt like represented their music off their album the best. And they gave out the Outstanding Live Performers Award at the end of the night. And I won that. I didn't win the Artist of the Year, but I won the Independent Rock Album of the Year, but I didn't win the Rock Artist of the Year. But I still got up on stage and got my little like certificate saying I made it in the top 5. But
hey, that's all that matters.
It was pretty cool, and everybody was like, hey, dude, anytime you can come to this town and win like more than 1 award, if you're going to win an award, you've done something. This town's brutal. Anytime you can come out here and win a couple awards, you've done something great. So I was very happy, and then I came back, and and then that thing just sat there. I did nothing with it. It was just like, well, nobody was picking up anything like that. So, and really, so it was kind of like I ended up joining forces with some young guys out of Lawrence, Kansas. They approached me and they said, hey, we heard you weren't doing anything. We got and they were just really, heavy and modern. And they said, we got the songs. We're just looking for a singer. I thought, I really wouldn't mind exploring this new modern heavy, sound that kids are coming out with at the time. And so I went down to the rehearsal hall, and it was like in a storage unit, I've always been used to big, warehouses with a nice stage, and these guys were cramped in like a 10 by 10 storage unit, man, at storage part. But I was like, okay, the PA, it was horrible, but they had a sound. I'll tell you that. They didn't have any lyrics or anything, but they had the music, and it was exciting, dude. It was heavy, and I thought, okay, I'm gonna play with this for a while. And so we formed a band, and we called it Bipolar, because the 2 opposing forces, that's the definition of bipolar. So it's like the old school and the young school coming together, And dude, I mean, to tell you, we cut another record, which is still sitting in the vault. We were just starting to mix it down. We had mixed 3 songs, and then my mom died, and I was pretty much financing it. My mom died. And then all the money that I had to finish that album on the mixing, I used to bury my mom.
Yeah.
and it was like, okay, and I really didn't have it in me to do anything. I mean, I was gut shot. So I went down to the Florida Keys, and I had good friends down there where I'd gone for years scuba diving and lobstering, and I was like, dude, I'm coming down to Florida, and I'm just going to start working again. And they said, well, come down and paint our house. We'll put you up on the yacht. You can paint our house. You still got your tools? I said, I do. I'll bring my trailer and my tools. And I went down there. My mom always wanted to live in Florida. That was our dream. Our son's going to make it, and I'm going to buy us a fucking nice house in Florida. I think every son's dream is that, but
Absolutely.
But I thought, I'm going to the Keys, that's as far south as you can go without going to Cuba. So that's where I wanted to go. And it was supposed to just be for a month or so, but I was down there for almost 4 years. I did nothing except just enjoy fishing and diving. Of course, I worked. I had a house up here in Kansas City, and that album just was sitting in the vault. It's never been finished. And I mean, it's a good record. It's totally different from the Flood stuff. I totally changed my voice to sing heavier and whatnot, So I'll have to send you guys some rough tracks of that.
I would love to hear that. That would be great. And maybe one day you can get it out there. But Tommy, I could talk to you for days on end because you got so many great stories to tell. But we only have 5 minutes left in the show, and I want to play at least one more song from the Flood record. But I mean, I always was a fan of this music and what you did. And I'm glad that Heaven and Hell finally got an official release on it. You get it on CD, vinyl. I mean, it was great talking to you, my friend. And we got to do this again. So get that record out, and we can spend another 2 hours talking about that one.
Mike, I tell you right now, thank you so much. I'm sorry I'm long-winded, but
not at all. I loved it. I just wish we had a longer show.
Listen, anytime, man. I feel honored. Anytime you want to do this again. Next time I'm going to let you talk.
You got it, buddy. I can listen to you all day, but it was definitely my pleasure, man. Listen, have a great night, and we will do this again, I promise.
All right, Mike. Thank you so much,
Take
man.
care. Bye-bye.
All right, bye-bye.
All right, what a great guy, Tommy Lee Flood. Let's play, let's play some Banshee first, and then we will close something out with he was talking about Mindless, so we'll play Mindless. But I want to thank all my guests tonight for being on the show. Don't forget, by Thursday, July 3rd, it's Land of the Free, Home of the Brave, our 4th of July special on the holiday matinee, 1 hour at 12 o'clock noon. And next Sunday night, who do we have on the show? Oh, Johnny Kelly from Patriots in Black and Quiet Riot and a ton of other bands. So don't forget to tune in next Sunday night also if you don't catch the Metal Matinee. And if I don't see you before Friday, have a happy 4th of July here in the USA. Let's wrap it up with 2 more songs. Let's do Banshee, We Want You, and then Flood with Mindless. Take care, everybody. Have a great night.
possibilities, that together there's just one reality. And there she'd be, an answered rosary from a prayer said once long ago by me. Now don't you see, I've simply lost all self-control. There goes my composure in the wind.